From our Washington, D.C. studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hena Zuberi. Americans lost $16.6 billion to scams in 2024, with $4.8 billion stolen from seniors. According to the FBI, investment and cyber scams are rising fast. This and more in today's show. Stay tuned. The State Department has strongly rejected a controversial claim by Israel's National Security Minister. Itamar Ben-Gvir said top Republicans supported his call to bomb food and aid warehouses in Gaza. Ben-Gvir made the claim after meeting GOP officials at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. But U.S. officials quickly denied this. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce called Ben-Gvir's remarks a complete contradiction to U.S. policy. She affirmed that the U.S.'s goal is to support Israel, stop violence, and ensure aid reaches civilians safely and without being misused by militants. Ben-Gvir's post on X claimed bombing aid depots would pressure Hamas to release hostages. His statement sparked backlash as the UN warns Gaza's humanitarian crisis is at its worst since Israel's genocide in the region began in October 2023. Israel has closed key aid crossings since March the 2nd, worsening conditions in Gaza. Arab foreign ministers have urged the U.S. to end its bias towards Israel and support Palestinian rights. The call was made at an Arab League meeting in Cairo, just days ahead of President Donald Trump's regional tour from May 13th to the 16th. In a joint resolution, the ministers firmly rejected any displacement of Palestinians, calling it a form of genocide and a clear violation of international law. They demanded that Washington push Israel to end its occupation and stop actions that threaten the two-state solution. The ministers stressed the need to implement the two-state solution based on pre-1967 borders and to allow Palestinians to build a sovereign and viable state. They also called for global support to rebuild Gaza following Israel's devastating violence, which resumed on March 18th after it broke a ceasefire with Hamas. Arab states welcomed an international donor conference planned in Cairo and reaffirmed backing for an upcoming peace conference co-hosted by Saudi Arabia and France in June. The resolution comes ahead of the Arab Summit in Iraq on May 17th. It highlights growing regional anger over Israel's genocide and continued U.S. support of it, and a catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Americans lost a record $16.6 billion to scams in 2024, with the elderly hit hardest. According to a new FBI report, seniors alone were defrauded of $4.6 billion, a 33% jump from the previous year. Investment scams are the top culprits, costing victims nearly $6 billion. These schemes promise high returns on fake stock, real estate, or crypto investments. Cybercrime is also rising fast. The FBI says it receives more than 800,000 fraud reports each year, with average losses of $20,000. California, Texas, and Florida report the highest losses. The FBI says that the real numbers could be even higher, as many victims stay silent out of fear of embarrassment. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is under investigation for allegedly installing the Signal messaging app on his Pentagon office computer, raising serious security concerns. The Washington Post says that Hegseth cloned Signal from his mobile phone to a desktop inside a classified zone where phones are banned. This reportedly allowed him to message family, aides, and officials from within the secure military headquarters. Though his spokesman claims Hegseth never used Signal on a government service, sources say otherwise. They suggest he used the app to share sensitive military details about a U.S. operation in Yemen. That operation became public after White House National Security Advisor Michael Waltz accidentally added a journalist to a Signal group where officials discussed timings, aircraft, and weapons. The scandal, dubbed Signalgate, has prompted a formal investigation by the Pentagon's Inspector General. Adding to the controversy, Hegseth allegedly shared Yemen intel with his wife, brother, and lawyer in a private Signal chat. None of them had security clearance for such information. Hegseth has since fired 3 aides, accusing them of leaks, but they deny the claims. A federal judge temporarily has blocked the Trump administration's attempt to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, lessons in public schools. The ruling follows lawsuits filed by the National Education Association and the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU. They argue that the administration's move violates teachers' First Amendment and due process rights. In February, the Department of Education warned schools and colleges to end DEI programs or risk losing federal funding. The memo claimed DEI efforts unfairly favored some groups to the detriment of white and Asian American students. But officials in Democratic-led states pushed back, saying the federal government is overreaching. They say DEI is legal and essential to inclusive education. The court agreed to freeze the policy for now. Lawyers argue the guidelines are vague and could chill academic freedom, leaving educators unsure of what they can teach. Newly filed court documents show Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil was detained last month without a warrant. His lawyers argue the arrest was illegal and politically motivated. Khalil, who was a legal U.S. permanent resident, was taken from his New York apartment on March 8 by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, agents. His pregnant wife, Noor Abdullah, who is a U.S. citizen, filmed the arrest. The footage, lawyers say, show Khalil calm and cooperative, contradicting government claims. Officials accuse Khalil of being aligned with Hamas, but no charges or evidence has been presented to substantiate the claim. Instead, the government cited his failure to carry a green card, a misdemeanor, as justification. Khalil is accused of organizing protests at Columbia University against Israel's genocide in Gaza last year. He has denied those claims. His lawyers call him a political prisoner and say this is part of President Donald Trump's crackdown on Free Palestine activism. Khalil remains in detention in Louisiana. ICE rejected a request for temporary release, causing him to miss the birth of his first child earlier this week. Trump launches Trump 2028 hats, reviving talk of a third run, even though the Constitution says he can't. This and much more coming up next. Welcome back. President Donald Trump has launched a new line of Trump 2028 apparel on his official website, selling $50 hats that hint at another White House bid. The U.S. Constitution does not allow any president to serve more than 2 terms. The move reignites speculation after Trump repeatedly suggested he might seek a 3rd term. In a recent NBC interview, he claimed that there are methods to do this. He even floated a theory running as vice president under J.D. Vance in 2028, who could later resign to let Trump assume office again. However, legal experts say the plan would not work. The 12th Amendment bars anyone ineligible for the presidency from becoming vice president. The 22nd Amendment, adopted in 1951 after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's four-term run, clearly prohibits anyone from being elected president beyond 2 terms. Despite constitutional blocks, Trump insists his 2020 loss was rigged, a claim dismissed by courts and election officials. Critics say his latest moves reveal an unrelenting drive to hold on to power, pointing to his past efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. That includes instigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. A bipartisan House Select Committee that investigated the incident said that the attack was the culmination of a plan by Trump to overturn the election. Barnard College employees were shocked this week after receiving a federal survey asking if they had faced harassment because they are Jewish or Israeli. The messages sent to personal phones by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission linked to a voluntary survey. It asked whether respondents identified as Jewish or Israeli and whether they had experienced intimidation, offensive comments, or pressure related to their identity while working at Barnard. The survey sparked concerns across campus, with many faculty members saying that it felt invasive and alarming. While marked as voluntary, the message arrived unannounced and addressed staff by name. The initiative appears tied to the Trump administration's wider probe into allegations of antisemitism at colleges and ongoing Free Palestine protests. Critics fear it amounts to profiling and surveillance under the pretext of civil rights enforcement. Elizabeth Bauer, a professor, warned it effectively was creating a list of Jewish faculty and staff. Others questioned how the agency obtained private phone numbers. Barnard officials have promised to notify employees in advance before sharing contact details in the future. The federal agency declined to confirm or deny an ongoing investigation. Israel killed at least 84 people and injured 168 across Gaza in the past 24 hours, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. In southern Gaza, 5 members of a Palestinian family, including 3 children, were killed early Friday when Israeli forces bombed a displacement tent in Al-Mawasi, Khan Yunis. Medical sources say that the victims from Abu Thalma family had taken refuge there after fleeing their home due to ongoing air raids. Israeli strikes also hit 2 homes in Khan Yunis, killing 15 people, and targeted a journalist tent outside Nasser Hospital. 2 journalists, Hilmi Al-Faqawi and Saeed Amin Abu Hassanain, were among the dead. The Palestinian Media Office says 212 Palestinian journalists have been killed since the war began in October 2023. An Israeli drone bombed a site near civilians at a cemetery in Abasan al-Kabira, although no injuries were reported. The United Nations says nearly 500,000 Palestinians have been displaced in the last month. The UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, or UNRWA, warns that most Gazans are now confined to less than a third of the territory. Areas are fragmented, unsafe, and barely habitable. The World Food Program has run out of food and aid in Gaza, and more than 1 million children are now at risk of famine, Gaza officials warn. Since October 2023, Israel has killed more than 51,000 Palestinians and injured more than 117,000. Other reports say that the death toll exceeds 60,000 or more, if the dead under the rubble are included. Meanwhile, Israel faces genocide charges at the International Court of Justice, and war crime warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have been issued. The U.S. has launched fresh attacks in Yemen, hitting 6 locations in Marib and Amran provinces. According to Al Masira TV, 4 strikes targeted Madghal region in Marib, while 2 strikes targeted Harf Sufyan in Amran. Casualties from this latest attack are yet to be confirmed. Since March 15th, the U.S. has carried out more than 1,000 airstrikes in Yemen. These have reportedly killed 217 civilians and injured more than 430, many of them women and children, based on data from the Houthi group. President Donald Trump recently defended the airstrikes, calling them decisive and powerful, and warned of total annihilation of the Houthis. The group has been attacking navies and commercial ships linked to Israel and its allies in key waterways such as the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden since November 2023. The Sudanese army says it has killed 60 militants from the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, in El-Fasher, the capital of North Darfur. The clash took place Wednesday during a fierce RSF attack west of the city. According to the military, 52 RSF fighters were also injured, while artillery shelling by RSF forces killed 5 civilians and wounded 40 others, including women. El-Fasher has seen continuous fighting since May 2024, despite global appeals to protect the city. It's a crucial hub for humanitarian operations in all 5 Darfur states. Earlier this month, the RSF claimed it had taken over the city's Zamzam refugee camp. UN reports say that at least 400 civilians have been killed and nearly 400,000 displaced due to the violence. In a separate incident, the Sudan Doctors Network reported RSF fighters killed 74 people and injured 178 in attacks on Al-Zafa village in West Kordofan. Among the dead were 9 women and 12 children. The conflict began between the RSF and Sudanese army in April 2023. So far, more than 20,000 people have been killed and 15 million displaced, making it one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The United Nations has urged India and Pakistan to show maximum restraint amid rising tensions following an attack on Indian tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir. Gunmen killed 26 tourists and injured 17 others. India blamed Pakistan so far without evidence and suspended the decades-old Indus Waters Treaty, triggering sharp reactions from Pakistan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that he's watching the situation with great concern and called for peaceful resolution through mutual engagement. His spokesperson also warned against actions that could escalate the crisis. Pakistan's Senate unanimously rejected India's accusations. Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar called India's move to block Pakistan's share of water an act of war. He warned India of a strong response and said Pakistan's nuclear status should not be underestimated. Following the attack, both sides suspended visas, expelled military advisors, and closed airspace to each other's airlines. Pakistan also shut the Wagah border and suspended trade. Shelling was reported across the line of control overnight, though no civilian casualties were confirmed. The U.S. State Department said it's closely monitoring the rapidly changing situation, but took no position on Kashmir's status. Foreign diplomats in Islamabad were briefed on Pakistan's stance. Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari called Pakistan's response timely and visionary, ensuring the nation of Pakistan's firm defense. Preparations continued at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome, where Pope Francis will be laid to rest in accordance with his will. His funeral is scheduled for Saturday and is expected to be attended by numerous dignitaries and global leaders. Security barriers have been placed around the basilica. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires on December 17, 1936, to Italian immigrant parents, served as the head of the Catholic Church and Vatican City State for 12 years. He was known for his efforts to reform the Vatican bureaucracy, address corruption, and tackle global humanitarian challenges. He died on Easter Monday. In accordance with his wishes, Pope Francis will be buried at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We're a channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. Donate now by visiting Muslim Network TV/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.